Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Ain't gonna hurt.
Here's my boomstick!
Game over, man. It's game over.
Welcome to the Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Sandro Luketic. And today we're talking 2002's Spider-Man. We assume if you're listening to this episode, you have already seen the movie. And I have seen this movie enough times.
I think it's safe to say that this is a movie that a lot of people have seen.
Yeah. Probably the first really big Hollywood comic book film since Batman.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like, not counting the god-awful sequels, right? Like, Batman and Batman Returns were quite a bit prior to this. Like, what, 10 years?
Batman came out in 89. I want to say Returns was 91.
That's what I was leaning towards. So, like, this is over 10 years later. Comic book fans and just superhero fans in general were chomping at the bit for another, like, blockbuster, at least, superhero movie.
No, people were waiting for Spider-Man. Like, what was the last time they saw a live-action Spider-Man? The 70s for a TV show that lasted a season, maybe?
There was a live-action show in the 70s?
It was pretty terrible.
I remember, the animated shows, like, was it 50s Spider-Man and then the 90s animated Spider-Man?
67.
Okay, 67.
Yeah. 67 and 94.
Were great animated shows, but I didn't think they did live action.
See, I missed out on the 94 one. I saw a few clips, and I didn't like the animation at all.
What? I mean, it was pretty much similar animation to, like, the Batman animated series, the X-Men animated series. They kind of were all coming out at the same time.
I didn't like the Batman one either.
Oh, those shows were so good, man.
I know. So I think I'm the only person that doesn't like it.
Oh, man, this is not a good omen for this episode at
all. My problem with this movie is that I think everybody thinks it's great because they wanted a Spider-Man live-action movie. And I will probably get a lot of flack for this, but I believe if you go back and you rewatch Batman 89, it's not that good.
What? Really?
Yeah. It's just people have been craving it, and we hadn't had anything like it, and they finally got what they wanted, so they had to like it because they had nothing to compare it to.
Oh, this just in, our subscriber base cut in half.
Oh, we're down to one now?
Yeah, the one that we lost was Joe Coleman. You insulted a comic book movie.
Oh, shit. I didn't even think about that. Joe, stay. No, what was your introduction to Spider-Man? Was it 94?
Yeah, that would have been the big introduction. I was really into comic books, but I was an X-Men guy, and I didn't really stray far from it at all. And when those animated shows, like the Batman, the Spider-Man, the X-Men, were all coming out kind of around the same time, I was just latching on to whatever animated show, and that was the one that got me into Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It helped sense that they did a crossover two-parter with the X-Men animated series, but
X-Men, that cartoon was amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I found, like, when I saw the trailer for this movie, and I guess it was probably 2001, it was the controversial ad where they still had the World Trade Center in it, and a helicopter filled with villains got stuck in a spider web that was in between the towers. And then, of course, the terrorist attacks happened, and they had to make a mad scramble and re-edit the trailer and remove that scene from the movie. But that trailer looks amazing. So yeah, the hype was there. It looked amazing. It's just, like I said before, I think we were just happy to get a Spider-Man movie, and I don't think that speaks to the quality. I was talking to a friend, Cody, earlier, and he was saying, you have to keep in mind that this came out in the era of Batman and Robin, when cheesy superhero films were the thing. And my reaction, which I didn't say, and I'm sure I'll hear an earful of it later, is that if your standards of what makes a good superhero movie is comparing it to Batman and Robin, you're far off from good quality.
No, that's okay. He didn't hear it. He was one of the people that we lost earlier in the episode when you insulted comic book movies, so he's already gone.
But before we get into the movie, though, I just want to say, obviously, anybody listening to this, I'm sure has heard of Spider-Man before, but the movie is about high school student Peter Parker being bitten by a genetically altered spider, and he develops superpowers. Is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man your Spider-Man for the movies, or do you like Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland more?
It's very close between Garfield and Holland. Probably nose to nose.
Interesting. Really? Okay.
Tobey Maguire is a distant last place for me. I think
I agree.
Probably the reason that I lean the most towards Holland is probably because I do think that both him and Garfield do an amazing job. Garfield might have been the best version of Peter Parker, with just like his bumbliness and his wit. Maybe not physical look as much. But Holland is probably the one that actually looks like his in high school, not postgraduate Tobey here.
Yep. I agree 100%. Holland looks the part and acts the part. Garfield acts the part, doesn't really look the part. And Tobey Maguire... Neither. It's rough. It's so rough.
I really don't know how the casting picked out Tobey Maguire and thought nailed it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wanted to get into production notes on this movie, but that would be a 3-hour podcast unto itself. So I'm just leaving that behind. But they you can find out why he was selected. I find it strange that they got Sam Raimi to direct this movie. Like, I love his Evil Dead movies. I love Darkman. I love Drag Me to Hell. I don't see him as a comic book fan, even though from what I've read, he had quite the collection. But then you get to Spider-Man 3, where he just included Venom because he was told he had to, and he didn't like the character or know much about the character. So how much of a comic book fan is he really?
No idea.
Exactly. The movie, though, does have some strong writing with David Koepp as the screenwriter, who basically wrote every Hollywood hit for 20 years. I mean, this guy wrote Jurassic Park. I have no problem with the writing in this movie. Sorry, excuse me.
All right, well, before we get into the movie, I want to clarify that this is our December fan pick. It was submitted by Craig, who is becoming quite the regular when it comes to fan picks.
We should just start calling him the producer, because he makes a lot of choices that we just obey.
I thought I was the producer of the show, but okay.
You definitely do all of the editing and everything, but he's the guy picking the content, apparently.
Well, I mean, other people can vote against them, as well as in the Twitter polls if we get to that. But he did submit his reason for picking this movie, as we ask all fan picks to. And he wrote, "It was a coin flip between Spider-Man and the Santa Claus."
Oh, thank God. All right. Wow.
He didn't put it in the reasoning, but speaking to him, I know part of it is the timing with the new Spider-Man movie coming out the day after this episode. So
it makes sense, and a very smart move, but it feels like we dodged a bullet, yet still got shot.
All right, well, let's find out why.
All right, we'll just hop right in then. I apologize, Sandro. There's a fair amount of notes in this one, but I might just try and skim over some things. If I miss anything, feel free to bring it up. I was typing while the movie was playing, so I'm sure there's a few things here and there I might have missed. But to start off with my feelings of the movie, the first note I wrote is, "Thank God we start off with 3 minutes of credits." What follows is a voiceover by our hero telling us his story is not for the faint of heart. But why? I never really got that one. He introduces us to Mary Jane Watson, played by Kirsten Dunst, who was only 20 when this movie was made. She's the love of his life, who doesn't even know he exists. But then we're introduced to a 27-year-old Tobey Maguire playing high school student Peter Parker, chasing the school bus he just missed. And already I'm so thrown off by this already.
I love that you included the ages of the actors at the time, so I don't have to ask you.
I had to. It's blatant. Like, Dunst can pull it off. Tobey Maguire has already graduated university or college at this point. It's undeniable. You can't miss it, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. But the malevolent bus driver heeds the late teen, letting him chase the bus for a while before relenting and allowing him to board. Parker is seen as such an outcast that nobody, no matter the social circle, wants him to sit with them. A foot pops into the aisle, tripping Peter, and the entire bus breaks out into laughter. Turns out that this is a class trip to Columbia University's science department. Peter mistakes a wave from Mary Jane as intended for himself, not noticing her friends approaching from behind. So not only is Peter Parker a loser here, he's a 27-year-old loser in high school.
With no social skills whatsoever.
They really want to make him seem alienated, a lot more so than in the comic books, I think.
I always knew that those bus drivers were purposely driving away from people.
Always.
Little did I know that the answer to my inquiries was in the 2002 Spider-Man movie.
Finding out a late truth.
Mm-hmm.
A Rolls Royce containing scientist Norman Osborn, played by Willem Dafoe, and his son Harry, James Franco, pulls up to the front steps of the department, and an embarrassed Harry asks the driver to pull around the corner. And at this point, I already like Harry more than Peter, and really shouldn't, but he's already shown much more character.
This is true.
Harry flunked out of private school and doesn't want his public school friends to see how he lives. Norman gives a holier-than-thou speech about never being ashamed of who you are, which is really strange because all he does is shit on his son.
We never actually find out why he got kicked out of the private school. And
no,
he doesn't really act or seem in any way that he is a troublemaker.
No, he seems down to earth, like honest. He's open about his feelings. He's apologetic throughout the film. And I looked into it a little bit, and I just assumed that they picked Norman Osborn as the villain of this film because of his duration throughout the Spider-Man comic books. Like, he's one of the oldest villains in the entire series. But apparently Raimi picked it so he could have the Harry and Norman father-son problematic dynamic, which I thought was great. But going back to your point, if we're going to talk about how Harry is a failure, talk about how he failed. Don't just state it as fact that he flunked out.
Yeah. Or play into it as a character.
Exactly.
Anything.
Well, the younger Osborn hops out of the car and yells to his friend Parker. And can you explain to me how these two are friends?
No.
Yeah.
We just finished seeing on the bus how every single social circle does not like Peter. And yet here's billionaire Harry who, I don't know, didn't want to be in private school, so he just up and left, chooses him to be his friend when he shows up.
Yeah, and like I was trying to think about it, I'm like, maybe because he's an outcast, but he's not really an outcast. Like, he can get whatever he wants. And
maybe
he's just Peter.
Maybe he has social issues because of the reprimanding that he always gets from his dad, but nope, he has no problem just talking to people. Yeah,
none. He seems like a genuinely friendly guy. Like, you could walk up to him and just start a conversation and it would be great. It's weird. I don't know. I really like James Franco in this movie. I think he plays the character of Harry Osborn very well. Norman calls to his son, walking over his backpack, which he forgot in the car during his hasty retreat. Harry introduces Peter to his father, and we get the "I'm somewhat of a scientist myself" meme. And Norman is impressed to discover that Peter wrote a paper about his research on nanotechnology.
And understood it.
Norman says that Peter's parents must be proud, but this is just an opportunity to let the audience know that Peter lives with his aunt and uncle. Is it ever really stated in this movie what happened to his parents? Because I think I missed that.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Because I remember in the comics, and just because I remember it doesn't mean it's true. I could be wrong here, and I'm sure Cody, if he listens to this, will point it out to me. I feel like they had to like fake their deaths because they were spies and scientists, and they pop up later in the comics. And I just remember a scene at a fair where Venom attacks. Anyway, moving on. Of course, the school is doing studies on different species of spiders, but Peter's more interested that they have the most advanced electron microscope on the East Coast, which never comes into play again in the movie. Also at this point, we've seen Flash Thompson, who I did not recognize the actor. Did you?
Yeah, it's Joe Manganiello.
Yeah. I know he looks nothing like that anymore. I only noticed it when I was looking up information online.
It's because he doesn't have the facial hair.
And, like, he grew a foot since then and, like, 200 pounds of muscle.
Even if he had the facial hair, you'd recognize him.
Yeah. Well, he was great in True Blood and, to a lesser extent, Justice League, just for a bit part. But he plays Mary Jane's boyfriend, and he has already been a dick on 3 separate occasions in the film. The scientist giving the tour is doing a rundown of different traits of the spiders at the lab, like jumping to catch prey, producing insanely strong webbing, a sense bordering on precognition. Spoilers. Each trait we see here is perpetuated by Peter throughout the movie. Harry uses knowledge from Peter to hit on Mary Jane, which is not cool, and our first sign of him kind of being a dick. And we learn that the lab has genetically engineered 15 spiders to have the traits of all the others, which seems like a brilliant idea. It never goes well. These animal experiments never go well. But Mary Jane points out that one of the spiders is missing, and nobody seems overly concerned, assuming another lab tech has taken it for study.
How?
You think you would sign that out?
How do you think she would count them that quickly, knowing where to look in every cage to see if he's not, hiding?
I have no answer to that.
She says it immediately. Doesn't even pause for effect. Just, was it 14?
Yeah. And I think the audience for this movie would have been us when it came out, right? And it wasn't until I sat down and really was paying attention to the movie as I was making notes where I realized when I first watched this, I just went along with it. I had no reason to critique any small details or really look too hard into things. I was like, okay, this is just the story progressing. It's fine. Yeah, one of them's missing. Great. Because we already know what's going to happen. We've seen it how many times now? We know he's going to get bitten. So maybe they just didn't feel the need to explain it.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Just making shit up now. Peter tries to flirt with Mary Jane by asking to take her picture for the school paper. And during this little photo session, he's, surprise, bitten by the missing spider. He snaps his hand back, throwing the spider to the floor. And the only question I have here is, what lab has carpeting?
This one.
It makes no sense. No logical sense. But anyway, cut to Oscorp, Norman Osborn's science company, where a lab tech is excited to show military personnel containing a general that they've perfected their new glider. Norman enters and one of the suits asks about the progress on the human performance enhancers. Vapor inhalation tests have been performed on rats and the results are rather impressive, with their strength increasing by 800%. The downside, though, is that some experienced heightened levels of violence, aggression, and insanity. The insanity one really kind of gets me. Norman assures them that these results were only from one test, and he and his colleagues agree that they are ready for human testing.
Except for the one.
Except for the one, yeah. I don't really know on what grounds they've deemed this acceptable. Obviously, he's just trying to hang on to a contract.
But he makes a point to say, everyone but this guy.
The officer says that if he cannot provide results for a successful human trial in 2 weeks, they'll pull funding and go to somebody else. Which seems really...
unsafe?
Yeah. It's like fast track it, fudge some facts, write up your report, and we'll get you some money. Well, we're now at the Parker residence, and we're introduced to Uncle Ben and Aunt May. as Ben replaces a light bulb in all of its 40 watts of glory. Ben's looking for work and displeased at how most jobs have become tech-related, and I feel really bad because this man is old enough that he shouldn't have to be looking for work.
Well, I mean, then that's the corporate greed, right?
It is, yeah. They do a really good job at showing that, but we don't really get much of a history as to what he's been doing this whole time.
He was an electrician at a plant.
Perfect. A disheveled Peter comes home and hurriedly passes his aunt and uncle, making a beeline for his room, where he proceeds to strip down and pass out on the floor. We get a CGI scene of his DNA being modified, and then cut to Oscorp later that night.
How is he the only one that's ever been bitten?
By a genetically altered spider?
In a lab with 15 of them, where apparently they can just escape because the security is not good enough to keep a spider in a box.
That's a very good question. Yeah, their safety measures are terrible. Wait, how did it get out?
We don't know. They didn't even know until Mary Jane pointed it out.
It just, yeah. Regulations, people. Norman, furious at the military threat, has decided to test the human performance enhancer on himself. Always a smart move. But I mean, get that sweet military money. Obviously, things do not go as planned, and the scientist has a violent reaction to the drugs, killing his aide, bursting through the containment structure with superhuman strength. I guess 800%. We'll see. Peter awakens on his bedroom floor and tries to ready himself for the day. The first unusual realization is that he no longer needs his glasses. Next, he is ripped as fuck. I don't know how Tobey Maguire got that ripped, but he looked good.
Do you think he did?
Oh yeah, he totally did. Apparently they were really hesitant to cast him until he showed up fit and in shape. Yeah.
Like,
well,
I feel like this is the only time you see him without a shirt on.
Yeah.
And you could have budgeted in the CGI to just do one scene of him ripped if for the rest of the I believe we were talking about it and you were saying even the costumes were like built to look like they have padded muscles in there.
Yeah, they did have foam muscles sewn in to make him look a little bit more structurally sound. But if you'll notice too, even if they did do CG here, it's only that one time, and I think it's similar to why we only really see Spider-Man in suit doing any sort of action at night. Because it's a lot easier to hide shit, and there's some janky CG when we see him in the day. Which is really strange. Oh, yeah. Anytime he's fighting crime, it's at night.
Huh.
And when you see him during the day, it's very cartoonish. Yeah, it's a film trick. Show as much as you need to and let the mind deal with the rest. Well, he grabs clothes to head out and looks out the window and directly into Mary Jane's window, which is really creepy. Do you find it odd that they've been neighbors since they were 6? Their bedroom windows mere feet apart, and yet they have no connection whatsoever?
Yeah, like when she talks to him, it's like she's just discovering him. And maybe in high school they're not that close, but if somebody moves in next door at 6 years old, you're probably just playing together regardless.
Yeah, right?
Like you could play up, we were, friends when we were kids and we just drifted apart because you started hanging out with the popular kids. But nope, they're just discovering each other right now.
Yeah. And there is no possible way that you can live next door to each other for that long with windows that look into each other's rooms and never see each other. Like, even if you weren't friends, you think like you'd make eye contact and just like nod or something and like pull the curtains too. But nope. Peter parkours his way. Peter parkour. That'd be great. Peter parkours his way down the stairs, scaring the shit out of his geriatric uncle, and heads out for school. Before he can leave, though, Ben reminds him that they're painting the kitchen after his classes. Did you notice the car in the driveway?
No.
It's the same classic 88 Oldsmobile Delta that is in every Sam Raimi film. It's Ash's car.
Oh?
Yeah, it's in every single one of his movies. Keep an eye out, man. Jesus. Peter sees MJ leave her house, her drunken father behind her yelling at her for being trashed just like her mother. And this is where I kind of find that we've got some poor storytelling. There's no reason for Peter to be shocked by this after living next door for so long. This is just for the audience to learn about MJ's home life, because he should be so used to this that he's either not acknowledging it or he's stepping up and doing something about it. And he's such a hero in this movie that he still never does anything.
Well, what is he supposed to do? Get his superpowers and then go beat up her drunken dad?
At least mention it? Talk about it?
Yeah, might have been the best scene in the movie if they did it.
Address it? Yeah. Peter creepily follows her on his walk to school, rehearsing lines about asking her out. But before he can muster the courage, her friends drive up alongside her, and she hops in for a ride the rest of the way.
Seriously, dude, shoot your shot. Like, just, are you okay? Do you need somebody to walk you to school?
Like, I get it. You love her. Fucking talk to her. She's having a bad day, a bad life. Like, put feelings aside and just confront her and be there for her. But while this is all going on, he again misses the bus and chases alongside of it. Only this time he slaps the banner taped to its side and it rips away, stuck to his hand.
So did she know that her friends were going to pick her up? Because she would have missed the bus too.
That's a very good point. I didn't think about that. She'd have more of an excuse, though. I mean, getting yelled at by your alcoholic father, whereas Peter was sprinting down the stairs. Well, not even down the stairs. He was running along the wall, and he still would have missed it.
Yep.
My next note here just says, "Holy penthouse mansion, Batman." I've never seen a domicile like this. The Osborns have the most beautiful home on top of a skyscraper in what I assume is Manhattan, somewhere in New York City. Harry runs into his father's study when he sees Norman unconscious on the floor. Norman has flashes of the night before but claims to not remember anything. An aide runs in to inform him of Dr. Strom's death at the lab, and on top of that, the flight suit and the glider have been stolen. Okay, I gotta stop here, man. Like, what? Do you like the Green Goblin?
In general?
Yeah.
In general, I've never been a fan of the Green Goblin character.
Me neither. But who would think that he was a good character to put in a live-action movie? Because that costume, you can't bring to life. No?
I mean, it's an iconic villain.
It's a great villain in a comic book and a cartoon. But holy Jesus Christ, when you see the costume in this movie, it looks god-awful.
I didn't think it was that bad.
Really?
I didn't think it was great, but definitely seemed to be less offended by it than you are.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look intimidating. It looks incredibly comedic. But I guess we'll get to that. Later in the high school cafeteria, Parker's spidey sense is tingling just as MJ slips in a puddle, sending her food tray into the air. He spins around, catches Mary Jane, along with her tray and all of her food. MJ comments that he has blue eyes. She never noticed it because of his glasses. We know she can't really be that vapid, right? But why is the writer trying to make her look stupid? It doesn't fit with her character at all.
Well, she's not going to say, "I never noticed you had blue eyes because I never looked at you."
Yeah, there is that.
Because that's probably the more likely reason.
I've never noticed you before. You have eyes. And they're blue. She leaves and Peter takes his place at the table. Putting his hand down, he realizes that a fork is stuck to his palm. He tries to shake it free and webbing shoots from his wrist, covering a tray of food on a neighboring table. He pulls back and the food sent flying, crashing into the back of Flash Thompson. Do you have any issue with the fact that the web shooters are organically in his wrist at this point?
Yes.
You do have a problem with that. Okay, why?
That's not the lore that I know.
Well, yeah, no, they changed it for the movie. I think it makes sense, though. The reasoning was that they thought he wouldn't be smart enough to build that kind of device.
Yeah, from what I know, in the other source storylines, whatever the word is I'm looking for here. He knows how to build the device, and it's the spider, like, DNA that teaches him the correct compounds to mix to make the substance. But yes, for building the actual device, I don't think this character has been portrayed as capable, even though he read a paper.
I don't know how he managed to make the costume either.
Well, he is quite the seamstress.
Seamstress? Taylor?
Yes. Seamstress.
Right. It's... I don't know. Especially after seeing his original costume, and then that's like the next one we see. It's ridiculous. Anyway. Peter leaves in a hurry, dragging the tray behind him, which gets stuck between the cafeteria doors. Pretty good sight gag. I chuckled. He's cornered at his locker by Flash. Peter's spidey sense is triggered again, and he easily dodges all of Flash's punches before landing one of his own and sending Flash sliding down the hallway. MJ looks on in astonishment. Parker runs from school and ducks into an alley. He notices the spider bite on his hand and then sees small spiky hairs protrude from his fingers. Somehow this makes him think about trying to scale a brick wall, and sure enough it works. I would be fucking terrified if I saw that. The first thought I would have would not be, I wonder if I can climb brick.
How do the little hairs do that?
And just dig in?
It's some pretty strong hair.
Oh, definitely. Well, he is a Spider-Man now. But it just seems weird. Like, I find you've got the character of Harry, who's very much rooted in reality. And then you've got the main character of the film, and a lot of the choices he makes are completely ridiculous.
No, they're perfectly fine.
No, I just missed out on it. Okay. Well, it makes sense then, because he's next sprinting and jumping from rooftops with an unfounded sense of confidence. Do we like this movie at this point?
No. But like, how is this confidence come out of nowhere? It's like, yes, these little hairs apparently make you scale walls. Did you establish that you're invulnerable to falling from high up?
Yeah, right?
Because I would think that your running and leaping would still be a little hesitant based on falling.
This guy is incapable of making friends. What makes him think he can jump from one roof to another?
How does he even jump from the roof?
He put one foot in front of the other? I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, we've already shown he doesn't know how to disconnect webbing or his fingers. Hence why the sign comes off the bus and the tray has to get stuck in the door. You think he would, like, go to leap off the wall and just be like, and nothing. He's
that would
still
be
holding on.
Fucking hilarious. Can you imagine he runs up onto the edge of the building and tries to jump, but his foot sticks and he just, like, breaks his ankle and just dangles from the roof?
I wouldn't have gone that far, but yes.
Well, I mean, have fun with it, man. You're going to think about it. Go all the way. He next attempts shooting his webs with little success. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with the character. They're not really building him up at all. They're just making him look pretty pathetic. But we go to nighttime at the Parker residence. Peter arrives to see an abandoned paint tray and a note letting him know dinner's in the oven. Through the kitchen window, he sees Mary Jane's father in a tirade over the fact that she didn't pick up his beer and hasn't done the dishes. He takes out the garbage and runs into MJ, who asks if he heard any of the argument. They talk about his weird situation at school.
Do they live in papier-mâché houses?
Yes. No, there's no way. These houses are old.
They're brick, man. They're solid brick.
Yeah.
Unless the window's open, why would you just assume he heard any of that?
I don't know, man. Her father was screaming pretty loud. But you think the only way he would really hear is if their window and his window were both open.
Yeah. You'd have to be purposely listening. That's their creep test. Did you hear any of that? Yes, you stalker.
They talk about his weird situation at school before Peter tells her his plan of moving to the city and getting a job as a photographer. Mary Jane wants to act on stage. The heart-to-heart continues.
She ain't acting in this movie.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, so far, who do you think is the strongest actor? and the weakest. I mean, we'll get to our awards, obviously, at the end of the show, but at this point, is anybody convincing or not at all convincing as their characters?
I'm still on the fence. Everybody's a nominee for both awards.
Ooh, okay. Sorry, like I said, the heart-to-heart continues with some flirting, and we get hints of Peter's uncertainty of the future, but one thing we know is that MJ will end up on Broadway.
How do we know that? Who knows that?
Because we're told that, and we have to accept it. Kind of like we're told this movie's good.
Okay.
Flash shows up in his new birthday car to take MJ for a ride, and she leaves Peter in the yard, which is a real harsh move. He really has nobody except for Harry and his aunt and uncle.
Was Flash a rich character?
In this one, yeah.
He just got a car for his birthday?
Well, they're in high school, right? Maybe it was his 16th birthday, and, rich parents.
No way Joe Manganiello was in high school.
We've already established that Maguire's 27 at this point.
Okay.
I don't know how old Joe was. Let's see if I can find that out very quickly. All right, Joe Manganiello. Born in 1976. Okay. So, what, 26?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Still not as bad as Maguire, but yeah, hard to believe him being in high school.
Yeah.
Later, Peter looks through the paper to see how much cars actually cost and stumbles upon an ad for amateur wrestlers who can earn $3,000 for lasting 3 minutes with the champion. You know what I've noticed in this movie? Whenever Peter Parker needs money, he just goes to the newspaper. That's the only source of information for him.
$3,000 for a wrestling match.
And it's not even a wrestling match when you get down to it. And we will very soon. But first we have to go through a montage.
Okay.
Peter's designing his potential wrestling outfit. And I really do love how they kept this from the comics and how we see early designs of the Spider-Man costume. I don't like how he comes up with the classic look in no time, though. Because it's just a few sketches and then we get, like, the look. Norman Osborn looks at the morning's issue of the Daily Bugle and is shocked that they've covered the story about his potential loss of funding. We then get our first glimpse of him losing his mind as we hear disembodied laughter. They do a really good job of that in this movie. The banter back and forth between Norman and the Goblin.
Interesting take on the character.
It really is. And I think it's probably the only way they could really do it, but they did it really well. It could have gone pretty badly.
Agreed.
The only problem I have with this is that I feel that Dafoe goes way too over the top, way too frequently. Did you not get that at all? Or do you feel like he held the reins, held the reins a little bit?
See, I think he went way over the top when he was the Goblin.
Yeah, but do you think it worked for the character?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie, especially when you get into things like, say, Jonah Jameson, that are, like, they stick out in the movie because the movie tries to be a little bit more grounded. When you look at them in a vacuum, feel very comic booky.
Yeah. Jameson, like, Simmons as Jameson in this movie is perfect. That character fits into the feel of this movie, where I find, like, you get such a great actor like Willem Dafoe, and he really shines with his subtleties. So when you get him going over the top, it's hard to take seriously. It's not bad, by any means. It just doesn't really fit for me.
Okay.
Uncle Ben drives Peter to school and takes the opportunity to talk to his nephew. He's concerned about what's going on in Peter's life. He thinks it's puberty and somehow gives the best advice ever, and that these are the years when a man changes into the man he's going to become for the rest of his life. Just be careful who you change into. And then we get the classic warning, remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
This didn't work for me.
That didn't work for you?
I mean, his uncle, giving him this advice because what?
Good old Grandpa Uncle Ben.
He's grandpa, but he likes to make a lot of rice. It seems like a little bit much for just missing painting the one night. They don't really show him missing a lot of other responsibilities around the house. It doesn't seem like too much time has passed. And his uncle's,
That's a very good point.
His uncle's like, "Oh, you're changing," and it's like, I've missed painting one time, and like the way Peter is, he might have just missed his bus home. Like,
yeah,
you know that thing I'm doing where I'm always running after buses? Yeah, that happened again, so I didn't make it in time to help you paint. Oh, you're becoming such a bad person.
There are a few lines in this movie that I find much more powerful than with great power comes great responsibility. And
Okay.
I don't know if it's because we just get it, like, we get hit over the head with it repeatedly throughout the Spider-Man story, not just the movie, but like every version of the movie and the comic books and everything. But the line he said before about be careful who you change into, I think is much better. Did any of the lines kind of jump out to you without being your like most memorable line? Did you find that like there's some that really carried a lot more weight than they're given credit for?
I think the one that you pointed out about, making sure that you turn into a good person, essentially.
Yeah. As opposed to with great power comes great responsibility. Like
Like,
if you're going to be a villain, you be a super villain.
I get why the line is there, because it is the Spider-Man like moniker, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's built into the origin no matter what.
Yeah, it's ingrained
medium
in
it
the
is.
story for sure.
But it doesn't even feel like it comes in the right time and place.
It just seems obvious. Don't you think? It seems like an incredibly obvious fact. If you have a lot of power, you got to be very responsible. Yes. Like holding any like higher up job means there is an equal amount of responsibility that goes along with it. We know this. This is daily life. I don't know. Well, let's just abandon it. I mean, people love Spider-Man. People love this line. Let them love it.
When dude's been flunking high school for 10 years, you probably should give him a lecture about being more responsible.
That's a good point. Stop hitting on high school girls.
That is a bad point.
Wooderson. Peter takes this as a lecture and tells Ben to stop pretending to be his father, which is a dick move.
Dick move that happens so quickly. It feels so unprovoked.
He is an asshole in this movie. I will argue that.
I mean,
the
even
entire
just
thing.
in this scene, it feels like it comes way too easily. Like, I mean, I'm watching the scene. It's like Uncle Ben didn't say anything egregious, nor did he really sound like he was attacking him. You just need to calm down, dude.
Yeah, and like I get it. You don't have any friends, and they think you're a nerd. They laugh at you. They trip you. Whatever. The one guy who's your father figure is looking out for you, gives you a couple of lines letting you know that he cares about you and he wants to make sure that you turn out well in life. Don't be a dick.
I agree.
Stop. Well, he feigns going to school and actually goes to the wrestling show.
Not school, the library. The
The
downtown
library.
library.
Sorry. Yes, that's right. They had to be downtown for that. Bonesaw is ready for this.
Okay.
I loved seeing Macho Man Randy Savage in this movie.
I think many people did.
I miss him.
At least most of the people that know Macho Man Randy Savage.
People who don't know wrestling still know Macho Man Randy Savage. He's iconic.
Yeah, I'm really proud of him for taking on a role that's so outside of his comfort zone.
He just plays himself going by a different name. It's fantastic.
He even does the elbow drop.
We also get Bruce Campbell as the announcer. Because, of course, it's a Sam Raimi movie. Bruce Campbell's in there.
It was a good little scene.
He's in all three of Raimi's Spider-Man movies. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
The rumor was for a long time that he was actually Mysterio. And then that never came to be. But that's why he was always around in Peter's life. Just popping up here and there.
Meh.
Yeah, we also get Octavia Spencer as the check-in girl. There's a lot of great cameos in this movie, where the actor's actually better than the cast themselves.
Am I
mean,
supposed to know who that is?
You ever see? No, you haven't seen Ma. Never mind. She's just a great actor. Let's leave it at that. But like, even like at one point, there's a random cameo by Jim Norton, a comedian. It was pretty funny. People just show up in this movie. It's awesome.
Cool.
My next note just reads, "Are you ready for more? Bonesaw is ready." It's time for Parker to make his entrance. His ring name, the Human Spider. Bruce Campbell says that name sucks and changes it to Spider-Man.
You ain't wrong.
No, the Human Spider sucks. It's terrible. The next bit is a little over the top because Peter enters the ring and a steel cage is lowered around it. A panicked Parker is confronted by Bonesaw and is immediately evasive, but makes a homophobic joke and then swings around the ring until he takes a chair shot and Bonesaw wails away on him. The joke doesn't really work in 2021. I don't think it really worked in 2002 either. But
where does he get this confidence?
He's an asshole. I think he's just so down on himself that he just lashes out. It's not my Peter Parker. Sorry, the beatdown doesn't last long, as Peter uses his new strength to dispatch the wrestler in seconds. And there's a weird take on wrestling rules here. A person has to be off of their feet for 3 seconds to lose the match. But then after being shorted by the promoter later, we learn that Peter pinned him in 2 minutes, but he didn't actually pin him. He just fell over and Peter stood there.
Yeah, I mean, it was after a cheap button mash. He was just hitting kick. As a kid in the arcade, everybody wants to slap in real life.
I also found it weird how the promoter actually shorted him that much money. It was $3,000 for 3 minutes, but he only gets $100 because he won in 2 minutes.
And he's lucky to have gotten that.
But this promoter is sitting with his desk covered in money somehow. But
I mean,
Peter
Bonesaw brings in a lot of money, man.
Apparently.
People want to see just how far Macho Man has fallen.
Oh, he fell pretty far. But he leaves with his $100, and a man walks in past, throwing a bag on the promoter's desk and tells him to fill it with the money. Man
just
runs down the hall.
Walks in. No security whatsoever.
No. And that's fine. I mean, we're going very early Spider-Man comics rules here, apparently. And he just runs down the hall with the bag of money. Peter steps to the side, allowing him to get in the elevator and flee with all of it.
It's
on his way
enough
home
to say thank you.
Yeah. Again, being a dick. Being a complete dick. Because he knows that the guy has the money. And he just wants to screw the promoter over like he was screwed over.
Yeah, he even says the same line.
Yeah. Fuck, what was that line?
I fail to see how that's my problem. Or
yes. Something along that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he's super arrogant. I don't like it. Yet we're surprised in Spider-Man 3 when he goes full emo Parker.
It's not the arrogance that bothers me about that, but keep moving.
Peter sees a large crowd and a police presence. Uncle Ben has been shot during a carjacking and dies on the ground in front of his nephew. Peter overhears the police saying they've located the shooter and takes off down an alley, putting on his homemade costume before chasing after the criminal. And this is our first real web-slinging scene, and it is so incredibly dark. Like I said before, you can't really see much. But it's just a cover-up for shoddy CG.
So we're led to believe that it was some distance away from the wrestling match, right?
Yeah, we are. But it isn't.
So the mugger ran that far from the wrestling match to where Ben's car is and then decided to jack a car?
Good point. I didn't think about that.
There was no cars parked around the building that were straggling from the wrestling match?
Maybe he just had a thing for 88 Oldsmobiles.
Maybe.
The car wrecks and the thief retreats to an abandoned warehouse. He and Peter fight, and the carjacker is revealed to be the thief he let escape from the promoter's office. Peter kicks him out of a window, killing him, and then escapes from the police. Have we ever seen Spider-Man kill anybody before? I can't think of once.
Not that I can recall.
Huh. All right. Just curious. He returns home to an awaiting Aunt May, and does he tell her what happened? Wouldn't the police have done something by this point?
I don't remember him telling her what happened.
Because she's just up in her housecoat, waiting, and Peter comes home, and they approach each other and then hesitate, and it looks like he says something, and then she starts crying, saying, "No, oh no." I'm not entirely sure what's happening here.
I don't remember any of this scene.
It's very short. It's just weird.
Lazy.
Yeah. The general arrives for a meeting at Oscorp's competition, Quest Aerospace, to see a test of their new exoskeleton experiment. The general hopes for a successful test simply because he wants to see Norman fail. Before the suit proves its abilities, it's destroyed by an explosive projectile, and a green figure on a glider, laughing maniacally, blows up the viewing bunker containing the general and Quest scientists. Pretty good scene, I thought.
Seems about right. And I mean, it shows that, at least at this point, the Goblin is targeting specific people. It's not just random acts of violence. It's like this was his competition.
Yeah. It was purely purpose-driven.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to Peter's graduation, and I have to ask, how long has it been since the murder?
They don't give a time at all, really, do they?
No, time jumps randomly in this movie. Because here, Aunt May is all smiles and super happy for her nephew to have graduated high school.
Well, I mean, we talked about it after so many years of failing. He's just happy that you finally got out.
She is so happy that it's taken him 10 years, but he's finally done it, that she's completely forgotten about the fact that her husband was murdered.
Seems about right.
Norman admits to Harry that he's surprised he actually graduated. You think that'd be going from May to Parker. And then he goes to congratulate Peter and tells him that he's considered family. Dejected Harry wanders off and sees MJ breaking up with Flash.
So couldn't they have just said, to tie into this surprise by Norman that Harry graduated, not that he got kicked out of the private school, but you could just easily say you flunked out of the private school?
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, okay, he's a nice guy. He's just a terrible student.
Mm-hmm. They do a great job of showing Norman just strip away any potential bit of Harry's confidence, though.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, at this point, we're about halfway through the movie, roughly, and I'm rooting for Harry. Screw Peter. Because then
I got that impression.
We return to the home of Peter, and he's in his bedroom crying, and it's up to May to console him. He's upset because he wishes Ben was there, and she says he was there, assuring him that she and Ben know that he's meant for great things. So then he decides to become a vigilante?
I would have thought he'd be training in the meantime.
This is quite the leap to make in a short amount of time.
Hey,
He's probably the oldest person to graduate from this high school. He's upset that his uncle was murdered by a man that he let escape. So he's an old man hitting on high school girls. He's responsible for not only a thief getting away with a large sum of money, but killing his uncle, making his aunt, the widow, console him because he feels bad, and now he's going to fight crime.
Hey man, when you get an opportunity to a new career, you just got to take a swing at it.
Just be careful of the man you become. Well, montage of Spider-Man stopping crime. Again, how did he make that suit?
That's what he graduated for, man.
Let's get that montage of him taking sewing lessons.
I mean, you said it before. They show the first costume that he made for the Bonesaw match. It's not impressive at all.
No, it's a hacked apart hoodie.
And then the next time we see it, he's built this amazing new suit.
He's was wearing a $50,000 suit.
That seems about right.
Well, at 55 minutes and 55 seconds into the movie, we finally meet J. Jonah Jameson, editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle newspaper. And I have to say, he is perfectly portrayed by J.K. Simmons.
Absolutely.
Probably one of the best comic book castings ever.
It's up there.
I can't think of anyone better, actually.
I'm still leaning towards Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was never a really big Iron Man fan, so I didn't read a whole lot, but he looks the part and he owns the part for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, I'd say a tie. But J.K. Simmons, Jameson, is a lot funnier in the movies than in the comics, and I think he made it his own and made it better.
Well, and this is back to like the characters that are over the top and very much comic booky. This character is not grounded in a reality that we know.
No, but it does work. It works really well. He's loud. He's abrasive. I love that he believes Spider-Man to be the criminal.
Why?
Why does he wear a mask? Does he have something to hide? And the only photo is him leaving. He's like, he's fleeing the scene.
He says, oh, he saved the day probably from something he started. And it's like, where are you getting that from?
He just jumps to every possible conclusion. It's great. I love it.
That's some real journalism for you.
But this is his character, man. He's furious to have Spider-Man on the front page of the most recent edition of the paper. But when he finds out that every copy's sold, he's like, from here on out, Spider-Man stays on page 1.
But yeah, he wants money. He's all about
the problem
the money.
is they don't have any good photographs of him. And we get a really cool quote of, Eddie's been on it for weeks.
You know what I find hilarious? The newspaper that prompts this entire thing has a picture of Spider-Man on it.
Yeah.
We can't get any good pictures of him. What about this picture we ran on the newspaper that sold out?
Yeah. I don't know. You're right. I do like the Eddie Brock reference, though. Unfortunately, they trash that character later on.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
Producer Craig, don't pick Spider-Man 3 next time.
He's not the producer. I'm the producer.
All right. We again return to the fact this movie has a major issue in presenting the passing of time. Because now Peter's out applying for work and runs into MJ after a shift at a diner. She hides her uniform under her coat and says that she's going to an audition, which surprises Peter. And how long has it been now?
It's supposed to be a while. I mean, they definitely imply that he's been in the city for a bit, working as a photographer. She clearly got a job as a waitress because the acting wasn't working out.
But he isn't a photographer. He just has the camera.
That's right.
Yeah. Because we find out what he's been doing up until the point here where he's looking for work.
I mean, they do definitely imply that it's been some time, and that's even how, like, Harry's relationship with Mary Jane grew in the background. I don't know.
So I feel like several months have passed. And, like, it just... There's no story of Spider-Man in this time? Like, does Spider-Man only come out once every few months?
Well, I mean, he's been fighting petty crime, but... You know what? I got nothing. I
yeah,
can't
me neither. All right,
well,
let's just move on. Just then, MJ's boss storms onto the sidewalk yelling at her, and she reveals the uniform to Peter. She asks him not to tell Harry, and this is how he finds out his best friend is dating the woman of his dreams. Which is harsh. I did enjoy that. That was some real emotion on the screen there. The depressed Parker goes to visit Harry. Norman is there, quote, visiting, but he's on his phone the whole time. And we learn that Peter was fired from his lab job with Dr. Connors for being late again, hence the job hunt. So, somewhere along the line, Peter got a job working for Dr. Connors, who any fan knows is, the lizard. But that entire job has come and gone. between point A and point B, which we aren't sure like where along the storyline exists.
How did he get a job with Dr. Connors?
I have no idea, because he wrote a paper on nanotechnology that he understood from Norman?
I guess.
Even though that's not at all what Dr. Connors does, but I don't know. They're just kind of cramming references in here now. But I really do hate the timeline, because it's all jumbled now. It doesn't make any sense. But we just go along with it.
A lot of these events don't even require a time jump.
They don't! That's exactly it. Condense it. It's a comic book movie. We don't need long passages of time that aren't addressed, but like are jarring enough because you reference it here and there. Well, Norman asks Peter who this mystery girl is that Harry is dating. The younger Osborn changes the topic immediately and tells his father that Peter's looking for work. Norman offers him a job, but when Peter declines, Norman's impressed at Parker's willingness to make it on his own. And ouch, man. The look on Harry's face is devastating. And this leads me to believe that he is the most complex character in the movie.
Take the job. You know what you did by earning it on your own? Becoming a scientist.
I don't know. I really don't like Peter in this movie.
I got that impression.
Well, he sees the headline of the new edition of the Bugle that advertises cash for pictures of Spider-Man. Again, cue scene of Spidey stopping crime and taking pictures of himself, because whenever Peter needs money, he just looks at the front page of a newspaper.
Yep.
He takes the photos to Jameson, who lowballs him on the payment, and Parker learns that Jameson intends on using the photos for a smear campaign against the vigilante.
Which also doesn't come up again.
No, it doesn't. At all. Meanwhile, at Oscorp, Norman is heading a meeting with the board where he announces that the company has surpassed Quest as the main supplier of the U.S. military. But all is not well. Quest has made an offer to buy Oscorp for a significant amount of money. The members of the board inform Norman that they are selling, and a stipulation of the deal is that he won't be a part of it, and they demand his resignation. The sale will be announced at the World Unity Festival, which seems like a weird festival. I don't understand the point of it or why this company is doing it.
But or why you would make announcements if that's something even if that is true. This company forks out the bill to do a parade or whatever, or a celebration, whatever. It's not an investors meeting or like a financial like town hall or something. Most of the people there are like, let me just enjoy what's going on here, man.
It's just a bunch of people and kids happy to be at like a party getting like carnival food and shit like that. I guarantee no one is going there to hear business statements.
Agreed.
But we cut to the festival anyway, and thank God it's headlined by Macy Gray, because they were popular once. Peter's taking photos of the crowd and massive balloon animal thingies. I asked you before what they're really called, but neither of us seem to know. He aims the camera to the buildings above and catches a glimpse of Oscorp board members, but more importantly, Harry and MJ on a balcony.
What the hell is he doing here?
Who, Peter?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
He gets paid to take pictures of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
At this moment, there's no reason to believe Spider-Man is going to be needed at this festival, and yet he's there taking pictures that are going to be used for nothing.
That's a very good point. Peter Parker sucks.
It'd be one thing if, like, they said, oh, yeah, Jonah Jameson sent me because one of their regular photographers was sick, and I don't normally do these types of photos, but I'm giving it a try. No, he's just there.
He's just there.
The dude that takes pictures of Spider-Man is just at the parade.
Yeah, he just needs to be there because of what happens next.
Correct.
Well, Harry and MJ debate her choice of dress before Harry leans in for a kiss, only for MJ to shy away. Then Peter's spidey sense begins to tingle. He looks to the sky and sees a figure on a glider flying toward the festival. People think it's part of the show until it starts lobbing bombs at buildings, and we get a Stan Lee cameo.
Is there any point where they show the relationship between Harry and Mary Jane to be good?
No.
It's like, Harry's dad's not entirely wrong. Maybe they're the gold digging part, but like, she doesn't seem to be interested in him at all.
No, not at all. In fact, originally when he started, like, when we see that he's, quote, interested in Mary Jane, it feels like he's doing it as a dig at Peter. Because he knows how Peter feels about her.
Yeah,
but it's whenever Peter's being celebrated and Harry's being torn down, that's when he starts going after Mary Jane. And I think that's a very realistic reaction. A garbage one, no doubt, but realistic.
I don't know.
And yeah, leads to a doomed relationship. Anyway, Parker does his best Superman impression, ripping open his shirt to reveal the costume underneath. The bombs have blown out the balcony, which renders MJ dangling above the crowd, and Spider-Man swings into frame, kicking the man, now seen in full Goblin gear, off of his glider and into a tent below.
Don't build your balconies out of styrofoam.
Oh, there's so much styrofoam in this movie. Do you see how the massive chunks bounce after falling like 7 inches?
No, I didn't really pay attention to that, but I mean, they were pretty bad before that. And like,
terrible.
What if Harry was still on that balcony? I think he was inside because he went to go get them drinks or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, he does come back outside. And it's like, I guess Norman has no problem with Harry being collateral damage?
No, he thinks nothing of his son. We know this. Where was I here? Ah, yes. On the ground, Norman, now full Green Goblin, attacks police trying to arrest him before engaging in battle with the web-slinger. And this is where the CG is rough. Like, I get it. It's 19 years ago, but it shows. It's bad. I know you missed it, but if you get a chance, just go back and take a quick glimpse. Like, it's very cartoonish. Spider-Man damages the Goblin's glider as the balcony finally gives way and Mary Jane plummets toward the ground. But this is a superhero movie, and Spider-Man saves her with ease. The two swing off together, and Parker leaves Mary Jane safely on the roof of a nearby building.
It occurs to me he could have left her much closer to where he was and not lost sight of the villain. But okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I thought that too. This movie has problems.
You literally just put her on the ground where this was and let her run away with the other people.
She was closer to the ground than the roof of the building that you left her on. Probably safer. Peter and Harry are hanging out. Harry is on the phone with MJ, slightly annoyed at how she's raving about Spider-Man. When the call's over, Harry apologizes for not telling Peter about the relationship and tries to justify his actions by saying Peter never made a move on her, and he agrees. At Norman's residence, the scientist is downing whiskey and having a conversation with a disembodied voice that he soon realizes is coming from within. A really great back and forth between the composed Norman and his broken psyche. Like we had talked about before, this is probably the best way they could have done the Goblin character. I just wish they could have found a way to make the costume look not terrible.
I mean, they could have done the character better if they didn't potentially do the split personalities, but then it wouldn't have worked for the relationship story with the son that they were building to not further investigate at all. So, got to make your choices.
Yeah. There are some great ideas in this movie and some poor execution. And there are some poor ideas with great execution. It's really weird how this movie came together. Norman has no recollection of what happens when the performance enhancers take over and is horrified by his actions of killing the general and the board members. At the Bugle, Parker and Jameson are having a meeting. Jameson has coined the term Green Goblin, and the two argue about Spider-Man's true intentions. As Parker leaves, the Goblin smashes through the exterior wall, attacking Jameson and demanding to know who is submitting photos of Spider-Man. What did you think of his arrival in the scene?
Meh.
Right? It seemed overly comedic in that Jameson finishes his cigar and throws it behind him out the window, and then it just flies back in the window and lands on his desk, and then the Goblin smashes through. The Green Goblin in this movie is not that comedic of a character, so that just kind of seemed out of place to me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's weird.
Well, Spidey arrives and is knocked out by gas from the Goblin's gloves, and he awakens on a rooftop, paralyzed. They have a back and forth discussing their moral views, and the Goblin asks, or I guess more so proposes, they join forces and leaves Parker to ruminate.
It's too bad he only made one batch of this gas, that he could only use this one time.
Yeah, I thought about that too.
Wouldn't have been an effective tool to have later on if he, turns down the offer.
Yeah, convenience for plot's sake, without actually thinking the story through.
Should have just implanted like a chip explosive if he doesn't.
The movie just ends with him killing Parker.
I mean, it'd be more believable.
It really would. They could have made this movie very realistic, and I would have been down for it. Like a non-canon Spider-Man movie. Fucking sign me up for that.
Yeah.
The next few issues of the Bugle paint Spider-Man as a villain and calling for his arrest. We get a one-liner voiceover from Norman stating, "In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you." Which is also a great line.
Yeah.
One night, Peter runs into Mary Jane and asks about her recent audition, and this leads to Peter asking her out for a burger, but she's on the way to meet Harry. We also get MJ calling Peter Tiger for the first time in another nice nod to the comics.
Not cool, man. I get that, like, Harry, asked her out when he knew you were in love with him. Or her.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, literally asking your best friend's girlfriend out on a date. Just think about that.
Mm-hmm.
At least when Harry did it, they weren't dating. It's not like he took his girlfriend.
Peter Parker is not a good person.
It doesn't seem like it, no.
Spider-Man is, I think, his attempt at being good. Showing people that he's good. When he's not. He's not at all. I feel bad for him. I don't think he's a villain by any means. He's just a broken character.
Yeah.
He spies thugs catcalling Mary Jane and following her after she leaves, and of course he pursues. They corner her in an alley, and she holds her own against one, until another pulls a knife, and they push her up against a wall. Peter makes his move and takes them all out, ducking into another alley since he forgot to put his mask on. But once the mask is in place, he reappears, hanging upside down from his webbing. He and MJ flirt, and she rolls down his mask, exposing his mouth for a kiss. And I don't understand why this got so much attention, but it won the MTV Movie Award or Video Award, or whatever. Anyway. Daytime. A building is in flames, and the fire department are doing everything they can to save everyone, but there's still a baby inside who they can't get to. Spider-Man swings into view and through a window. A moment later, he reappears with the baby, returning it to its mother. The police attempt to arrest him, but a scream from above reveals somebody is still trapped inside, and the police allow the hero to go save her, stating they'll arrest him when he gets back.
I ain't coming back, Chief.
Yeah. Once again in the building.
Why are they going to arrest him?
Because he's a villain.
So the newspaper does their work for them and determines who's a villain?
Yes, obviously.
The newspaper said he was a villain. We should arrest him.
Yeah. Yeah, the Daily Bugle is just Trump in print form. You just say it's true, and then it's true.
All right, then.
Once again in the building, it's revealed that the screaming woman is the Green Goblin. Infuriated by Parker's refusal to Osborn's proposition, the Goblin throws bladed pumpkin bombs at the web-slinger, and of course a fight ensues. And then for some reason we fade to a groggy Norman in the elevator on the way to Harry's apartment for Thanksgiving dinner. Aunt May lets him in, and Norman finally gets a chance to meet Mary Jane. Peter's late, but swings into his bedroom, still decked out in Spidey gear. And I'm completely confused again for this time jump, because now he lives with Harry?
Yeah, their dad, Norman, got them an apartment.
But Harry had lived there.
Just don't.
Harry was there when Peter was visiting, and now Peter lives there. But there was another time jump somewhere that we're just not privy to. Okay. All right, sorry. I'll drop it. Everyone rushes into his room, which is kind of weird. And he hides by clinging to the ceiling. They all leave, but a drop of blood from a cut sustained during the Goblin fight falls to the floor. Only Norman notices, looks to the ceiling, but at that point, nobody is there. Parker loops around and enters the apartment in his regular clothes now, and they all sit at the table to say grace. Norman goes for the food first, but Aunt May smacks his hand away, and the look on his face is pure murder. He's good, man. It's really good.
Dude's just hungry.
May points out that Peter is bleeding through his shirt, and immediately Norman knows what's up. He excuses himself from the table and leaves.
Not very trusting, I guess. I mean, I know Peter comes up with not a great story, but like, you have no reason to believe that the story is not true, except for the fact that you're insane. Ha ha ha.
He is insane, though.
But yes, and through that insanity, he gets the clarity he needs to solve the case with no clues beyond Peter being cut on the arm.
Yeah, there's no reasoning. He just knows.
Yep.
Harry follows his father into the hallway, begging him to stay since this was his chance to get to know MJ. Norman belittles the relationship, saying somebody like her isn't staying around because she likes Harry's personality. Everybody inside can hear every word because these walls are also made of tissue paper. And he also dishes out one of the harshest lines I've ever heard.
Well, the front door wasn't closed, but go ahead.
Not all the way, yeah. A word to the not so wise about your little girlfriend. Do what you need to do with her, then broom her fast. Jesus.
It's a kid-friendly movie.
That's fucked up, man. It's a great line and really well delivered, but harsh.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely see why she would be offended.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What I don't see is that when he goes back in, her first reaction is something like, "Thanks for not standing up for me." Except for one of his exact lines are like, "You're wrong about her. She's not like that."
Yep. Yep.
What?
And then he does end up standing up for his father when he returns to the apartment, and she does storm out. But you are right. He does defend her, and she calls him out for not doing so.
Yep.
Norman and the Goblin have a back and forth on what to do about Parker, and they decide first they attack his heart. Aunt May is praying over a photo of her late husband when the Goblin bursts through the wall, terrorizing her and sending her into a spell. I thought he was going to abduct her at this point. I didn't realize that he was just going to try and scare her into having a fucking heart attack.
He just tries to scare her. He doesn't kidnap her. He doesn't try to injure her. He just scares her.
Yeah. It's weird. It doesn't fit. But Peter rushes to the hospital to see his aunt and hears her ranting about, quote, his horrible yellow eyes. And this is where Peter realizes that Norman knows who he is.
Well, at least we get the answer that Jonah Jameson was asking for, why he covers his face with a mask.
Yep.
He doesn't want to put his loved ones at danger.
Yeah, I mean, this happens every time there's a masked superhero. You find out who he is, and then his family or friends or her family or friends are in danger. It's nothing new. It's a trope that's horribly played out.
I kind of like that the Goblin didn't do anything to May.
I do too.
It's almost like this like flex move where he's like, I could have gotten to her. I just chose not to.
Yeah.
Right? Like sending a warning.
Yeah, and it works really well in this movie too. I don't really remember the Goblin character well in the comic books, but this to me really felt like a Joker move in Batman.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah. Just to like drive them crazy.
Well, yeah, and at the same time, even if he did kill Aunt May there or kidnap her, that's over, right?
Yep.
Like, yes, you can be angry, but the fear of making sure that May is okay doesn't go away if he just shows up like this. And, you know, like, you got to be on your toes 24/7 because I could come at any time, and look at how close I got.
No, it's probably one of the better parts of the film, really.
Maybe, yeah.
Peter and MJ talk at the hospital. She confesses that she thinks she's in love with Spider-Man. Peter says he's Spider-Man's unofficial photographer, and when MJ asks if he talks about her, Peter uses it as an opportunity to tell her how he actually feels about her. She reaches for his hand, and Harry arrives just in time to see it.
This is all very stupid to me.
It is very stupid. I hated every second of it.
The whole, like, oh, he said this, terrible. Just not done well at all.
So sappy.
And, like, Mary Jane is in love with him because he saved her a couple of times.
Yeah. Again, like, after the whole scene, I just feel bad for Harry.
I guess. I mean, at no point did they paint Harry out, in this movie at least, to make him a bad guy. And he's just getting crapped on.
Yeah. Throughout the entire... No wonder he ends up the way he does at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Harry goes to his father's house. Upon entering, he hears the laughter of the Goblin, but it subsides when he calls out to Norman. His father appears atop the stairs, and Harry admits that Norman was right about MJ. She's actually interested in Peter, and this fuels Norman's hatred for the young photographer.
Why?
It was almost like
why
Harry saying that gave Norman like the go-ahead.
You haven't been Father of the Year at any point in this movie. Why do you...
Terrible.
Not to mention, like, you're the one that said she's just in it for the trust fund, and he says, oh, you were right. He's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I was right. I'm angry now. It's like, why? You should be like, yeah, I told you so.
Yeah, and, like, he's shit on his own son for what seems like it could be his entire life. And then because he is betrayed by Peter, that's what... I don't know, man. It's so horribly unbalanced. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Norman takes the opportunity to admit that even though he wasn't there for Harry when he should have been, he is proud of him. Doesn't show it at all, but okay. And at the hospital, May tells Peter that
didn't
MJ...
work. I know
didn't
it's
work at all.
supposed to make Harry's ending feel more real because he finally got something from his dad, but...
Some acknowledgement.
It wasn't done well.
No, it's terrible. At the hospital, May tells Peter that MJ doesn't know him because he won't let her. Everybody else knows. These words trigger Peter's realization that everybody actually does know, including Norman. He tries to call her, but there's no answer. He leaves a message, but the phone is picked up, and the Goblin's voice asks if Spider-Man can come out to play, then hangs up.
Yeah, another one of those scenes.
Yeah. Leading into a scene that I just don't like.
Okay.
The Goblin abducts MJ and takes her to the Queensboro Bridge, where he also takes a group of children hostage in a tram car. He dangles MJ and the tram over opposite sides of the bridge and forces Spider-Man to choose whom he will save, then drops both. Of course, Spider-Man saves everybody because he's Spider-Man, though he goes for MJ first. The webbing supporting the tram car begins to break, and Peter makes MJ crawl down to the tram, and nearby barge is heading their way to catch them. Goblin on his glider flies towards Spider-Man, ready to take him out, but gets pelted with objects thrown from New Yorkers on the bridge above.
Those are pretty brave New Yorkers. If I saw that dude throwing pumpkin bombs, I'd shit myself.
Yeah, this is part of the reshoots that they did, supposedly, where it was post 9/11. So they were trying to show a unified New York. Goblin regroups, flying at Parker and flying him to a nearby graveyard, where he messes Parker up something fierce. He really puts a beating on him.
Oh, yeah. Where was your spider sense now?
Yeah, really, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it looked cool, but it doesn't make sense. And it's only after Goblin threatens to kill Mary Jane slowly that Peter gets the upper hand in the fight and brutally beats him down. Osborn feigns being regular Norman, trying to convince Peter that the Goblin killed people, not him. But in actuality, he's remotely guiding his glider behind Parker to take him out. The bladed glider speeds towards Spider-Man, whose spider sense finally alerts him, allowing him to jump over the projectile and allowing it to stab into Norman's chest. The dying villain...
One per fight. You get one per fight. One spider sense and that's it. Good thing you saved it for this one.
Yeah, the bar was fully charged. The dying villain's last words beg Parker not to tell Harry. Peter returns Norman's corpse to his study just as Harry enters the room. Harry yells at the costumed hero, demanding to know what he's done, and grabs a gun. But before he can take aim, Parker has disappeared. At the funeral, Peter approaches Harry and apologizes, saying he knows what it's like to lose a father. No, he doesn't. Harry retorts that he doesn't. He didn't lose Norman. He was taken from him, and one day Spider-Man will pay. He then thanks Peter, saying Parker is the only family he has. The two hug, and Harry leaves.
So many things wrong with that.
I know. Let me get a quote from Peter here saying, "No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, the ones I love will always be the ones who pay."
That makes sense.
Yep. MJ finds Peter at Ben's grave and they hug. She tells him that when she was up on the bridge and thought she was going to die, the only person she thought of was him. She confesses her love for him and they kiss. Parker voiceover says that all he wants to do is tell her he loves her. He then says he can't. He tells her that they will always be there, that he will always be there for her. He will always be her friend. When she asks, "Only a friend?" he responds with, "That's all I have to give," and walks away. MJ touches her lips and I guess is remembering the kiss with Spider-Man.
Yeah, they kiss the same.
Well, we get another Peter voiceover saying, "Whatever life holds in store for me, I will never forget these words. With great power comes great responsibility. This is my gift, my curse. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man."
I'm Batman.
Ruins the fucking movie completely.
I'm Batman.
It could have been perfect. All they had to do was end it after "This is my curse."
Yep.
Cut to black. That's it. But instead, we cut to Spider-Man swinging through New York, and then cut to black, roll credits. This ending was a major slap in the face, and they perfectly topped that off with "Hero" by Chad Kroeger. It's a bad ending.
Yeah.
So, feelings the first time you saw this movie versus feelings after the most recent. Any difference?
Well, I remember when I was younger, I would have been about 19 when this movie came out. Like going to the theater to see it and having a generally very positive memory about it. Like, maybe it wasn't the greatest movie, but it was really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
No, not so much.
Yeah. I also really enjoyed it when it came out. And I think it's because I wanted to see Spider-Man on the big screen in a live-action movie. And after watching it a couple of times over the last week, I don't need to see this movie again. Ever.
You don't need to see it ever again. I don't want to see it ever again.
Me neither. The thing is, it's not a terrible film. It just feels lost. And there's nothing in here that really commands your attention, and there's nothing about this movie that makes me want to tell other people to watch it.
Too many times things just happen.
Yeah.
I get it's a comic book movie. There's got to be a suspension of disbelief, but like something has to happen to explain any of this stuff.
Yes. And I do have to say, though, when this was the only live-action Spider-Man movie, I was happy. Well, we have a lot more live-action Spider-Man movies now, and this is one of the worst in comparison. So I feel like, I don't know, I feel kind of bad saying I don't like this movie because I've seen all of the other ones. But as a standalone, I mean, it's not terrible. It's just not good.
I'd say second worst, in my opinion.
After 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I'm going off my nostalgia because I didn't go back and rewatch it, but I always felt, based on memories of the movies at the time, that the second one was absolutely the best in the trilogy.
Oh, undeniably. The Spider-Man 2 is phenomenal.
So how'd this movie do, Ben?
It did really well.
I'm not surprised.
No, of course not. You knew it was a success. Like, there was no way this movie was going to lose money.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that just carrying the Spider-Man label, like you said, people wanted this movie so bad for so long, for so many reasons, that reviews or not, people were going to see this in the theater like day one. And it wouldn't be, I mean, I don't know, maybe people that were a little bit older when they saw it even back then thought that it was lacking. But at that point, you've already paid for your ticket.
Yeah.
And, like, if you didn't like it when it came out and told people, like, yeah, it wasn't that good, I didn't really like it, people would have probably still gone to see it just to see it for themselves.
Yeah.
Nowadays, superhero movies are a dime a dozen. So if you said, oh...
everywhere.
Yeah, so if you said, oh, XYZ movie was absolutely horrible, people might just say, all right, well, I'll just skip it then. But back then, I feel like this one would have made money just because people would have been like, oh, it's bad? I got to see this for myself.
Yeah, totally. You want to take a guess on what the budget was?
$85 million.
$139 million.
Where did that money go?
I don't know.
I guess 19 years ago, CGI might have been more expensive, but...
yeah, probably.
It still seems pretty high. I mean, how much does it cost to buy styrofoam and paint it the color of a balcony? I don't...
Well, we know that they spent $3 million on suits alone.
All right, well, you still have to justify $136 million then.
Yeah, that's true. Do you want to take a guess at how much it grossed?
This was a runaway success, right?
Yeah.
Budgeted 139. Let's say $500 million.
$825 million.
I was not close.
No. It was a huge hit.
I mean, I guess
it makes sense. I mean, I see why it did so well. My main problems are looking at the ratings.
Okay. Real quick, I do want to say, no question why we got a sequel fairly quickly after then.
Oh, yeah. No. It's almost mandatory at that point.
With that kind of money, even if the people that made the movie didn't like it, you should be all over making a sequel.
Yeah. The higher-ups at Sony are like, what's a Spiderman? But yeah, man.
It made $800 million? Give me more Spider-Men.
I need all of the Spider-Men. 7.3 out of 10. IMDb.
Okay.
I disagree. I don't think it's that good.
Okay.
Now I'm going to start off with Rotten Tomatoes with the audience score.
That's a bit of a change-up.
67%.
Okay.
I don't agree with that either.
Okay.
The critics, the tomato meter, 90.
No.
90%.
No, there's no way.
I know we don't normally rate the movies, but if you had to on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 obviously being the worst and 10 being the best, what would you rate 2002 Spider-Man?
4 out of 10. Slightly below average.
I'd give it a 6.
Now, are you doing a typical 6 where most people consider 7 an average? Or are you counting 5 as the average?
5 is the average.
So it was a little bit above average of a movie for you.
There was a lot of good, but it was so disjointed that it failed. But if you look at those individual good parts, I think there's enough of a solid movie here to make it better than 5.
Okay.
You want to just kind of... and that's honestly, that's why I skip production notes, because there is so much to talk about here, good and bad. I do highly recommend people look into it, because there's some really fun stories, but too much time, man. Too much time.
All right. Well, why don't we jump into awards?
Alrighty.
I'm going to go with Craig's awards first, and then the typical order.
Okay.
So for worst performance, he did not give me any reasoning for either of these. He just wrote James Franco as Harry Osborn. I don't think I can agree with that one.
Oh, no. It's horribly wrong.
But again, I have no reasoning to go on here for justification, so...
Worst performance, James Franco. He was too realistic. I didn't like it.
So then you would normally start off worst performance.
Oh, yeah. Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker.
Okay, now you can give a reason, because yours isn't just an answer on a survey.
He just looked shocked the entire time. He couldn't carry any dramatic lines whatsoever. Even given amazingly well-written lines, he makes them sound dumb.
Well, we would
I understand
know from this movie.
I understand the character is poorly written at times, but he makes it look worse.
Okay.
One of my favorite lines in the movie, my most memorable line of the movie, is one of his lines. And I had to edit it so it was good.
You got me curious.
Yeah. You?
I went with Rosemary Harris as May Parker.
Interesting choice. Why?
It was very close with a lot of people, but specifically when Green Goblin breaks into her house, her reaction, as well as after in the hospital when she's like, those eyes,
Yeah.
those two scenes of, I don't know, I guess it's supposed to be panic, it literally won the award for her.
All right. I don't know. Like, she was 74 at the time. She's a classic British actor. Like,
Doesn't matter. Director could have said, hey, tone that down a little or something.
yeah. I did find that her accent broke through a fair amount of times, though.
Yeah. Either way, worst performance for me by far.
Yeah, okay. No, I understand your reasoning there.
All right. So best performance. I'll start after reading
The
Craig's.
producers.
No, I'm the producer.
No,
Craig.
you're the editor.
Okay. Craig wrote J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I can't disagree. But for almost the same reason that I didn't pick Bonesaw, I don't think he had enough screen time for you and I. I understand how fans' picks might not conform themselves to the same kind of rules as we do.
Yeah.
I mean, J.K. Simmons was fantastic. I couldn't pick him personally because he wasn't on camera enough. But you start best performance between you and I.
Well, I mean, there's no surprise here.
Wait, no, I do.
Yeah.
I do. My mistake. I went with Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn.
Okay.
And similar to May Parker, it's not based on the overall performance. It's based on segments. And really, those scenes where he plays split personalities and essentially plays two characters, I don't know if any other actor in this movie could have done that.
Oh, in this movie? Hell no.
Yeah. But, I mean, those split personality scenes are what won it for him, in my opinion.
Okay. He's really good. Really, really good. My only issue, like, I would have picked him except for this one thing, and I felt like when he is Norman, he's fantastic. But once you get the Goblin persona, it's just a little bit too heavy-handed. And that's why I didn't pick Willem Dafoe, but I did have to pick James Franco, which I know you're not surprised by.
I'm not surprised, and honestly, absolutely could see an argument for it.
Yeah.
Like I said,
you know what's weird?
You know, if I was trying to go with overall performance consistency, I'd probably lean towards Franco. But, I mean, for me, I went, in regards to both best and worst performance, I went with the peaks and the valleys.
Yeah. Well, what caught me off guard is that I don't even like James Franco at all. But I felt he was great in this movie.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, so most memorable line.
Mm-hmm.
Craig gave me 3. I'm not reading his runner-ups because that's not how we work. And you're not going to agree with this. He wrote, "With great power comes great responsibility. This is my gift, my curse. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man." I'm Spider-Man.
I'm Spiderman.
Anyway, that's what he went with.
Okay.
I know you probably disagree because of the I'm Spider-Man part.
Yeah.
Chances are, if it was just the "this is my gift and this is my curse," like you said, and ended it there, I don't think you could argue with it.
Yeah. Well.
All right, well, what did you have for most memorable line or favorite line?
I had that line. Except I added to the beginning and took off that horrible ending. Because you can't start with great power, or with great power comes great responsibility. Because the line is, whatever life holds in store for me, I will never forget these words. With great power comes great responsibility. This is my gift, my curse. And you just cut the rest of the line off there. And that is, like, that stuck out to me. I remembered that part. I don't remember the who am I? I'm Spider-Man. And that's probably because it's terrible and my brain just shut it out.
Honestly, like, hearing you read that back aloud, yeah, it felt like such a more powerful line without that ending.
I know, right? It's a good line. And they ruined it.
All right, then.
What about you, man?
I went with good old Bonesaw. Hey, Freak Show, you're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Savage was so good.
Yeah, and I mean, his
That's a great
lines
line.
were great.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the most memorable line, but it's absolutely my favorite.
Yeah. And with reason, too. He's the one character that in the movie that really felt like a comic book character that still felt like he belonged in the movie.
Yeah, because as much as J. Jonah Jameson felt like a comic book character, he didn't fit in his environment in the movie.
No.
All right, buddy. We got one award left here.
Memorable scene. Or favorite scene.
Craig and I have the same one.
Okay. Lay it on me.
So Craig wrote, most iconic scene must be the upside down kiss.
Most iconic. Sure.
I'm going with that one as well, but I am going to absolutely reinforce that it is memorable, not favorite in this regard. But anytime I think of this movie, that scene comes to mind. That scene is memed and parodied and used in so many other shows and movies. Like, it's not just memorable, it had cultural impact.
Yes. I agree with everything you said there.
Again, stressing I'm not going with favorite, just memorable.
And it is incredibly iconic. You know that scene is from a Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst Spider-Man movie. I forgot which one it was in, though.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. It happens in this movie.
Dude, I can't remember anything about movies, and I remembered, having only seen this movie once when it was brand new, that this scene was in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, then what did you go with?
For me, it's always been one scene. When Norman is fired by the board, or they demand his resignation. They're saying, like, you're out, and there's a look of shock on his face, and he's rubbing his mouth, and he's like, am I? And then he looks off to the side, and there's a really quick smile that crosses his face for a split second, and then it cuts to the next scene. And it's like watching somebody break mentally. And then it just goes into the next scene. It was perfect. He acted that scene so well. That is the one scene I remember from this movie. I love it.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on 2002's Spider-Man. If you'd like to share your thoughts on the movie, you can hit us up on social media. We are on Twitter at BSBargainBin. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/BSBargainBin, or you can shoot us an email at bsbargainbin@outlook.com. Benny.
Mm-hmm.
We got 1 week before Christmas.
Yes.
What movie will we be reviewing in that time?
Let's see. Do you like serial killers? Stupid question. Do you, though? Do you like serial killers? How about snowmen? Do you like snowmen?
No, God.
Do you like when you cross a serial killer with a snowman?
Oh, God, no. You're not going to say it, are you?
Because next week we'll be talking about 1997's Jack Frost.
There it is.
One cold night, science and evil collide. Oh, yeah. A serial killer is on the loose.
We hadn't even tested the acid on an amoeba, let alone a human cell. This is a disaster.
Look, I just saw something that doesn't belong in this world, and it's out there killing my friends. Now tell me what it is.
Jack Frost.
I think Jack's about to make an entrance. And he's giving cold-blooded a whole new meaning.
Hey, Jack! What? You left the 7-10 split.
Hell has just frozen over. Blow me. Jack Frost.
Look, Ma! I'm a Picasso!
Until next time, guys, have a good one.
All the best, guys.